My name is Mirachin, and until 3 weeks ago, I was just another face in the fluorescent-lit maze of Viridian Dynamics, a mid-level data compliance analyst who showed up on time, triple-checked her work, and never once raised her voice in a meeting. I wore sensible flats, kept my lunch in a reusable container, and believed, foolishly, that if I played by the rules, the system would play fair back. I was wrong. It started with a tuna sandwich. Not even a fancy one, just canned tuna, a spoonful of Greek yogurt instead of mayo, diced celery, a squeeze of lemon, all nestled between 2 slices of whole wheat I'd toasted that morning. I ate it at my desk every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork, always after 1 p.m., always after I'd cleared my afternoon task queue. HR had sent a memo months ago about maintaining professional workspaces during core hours, which everyone interpreted as code for, don't leave crumbs on your keyboard. I took it seriously. I wiped my desk clean before and after. I even kept a tiny handheld vacuum in my bottom drawer for emergencies. But on that Thursday, the one that unraveled everything, I didn't even get to finish the first bite. I just unwrapped my sandwich, the smell of lemon and sea salt cutting through the stale office air, when Lyle Brandt, Viridian's newly appointed head of people operations, appeared at my cubicle entrance like a shadow with a clipboard. Lyle wasn't HR in the old sense, the kind who handed out birthday cards and mediated parking disputes. He was corporate muscle, brought in after Viridian's last round of layoffs to optimize culture and enforce accountability. His suits cost more than my monthly rent, and he never smiled unless it was right before he delivered bad news. "Mira," he said, voice smooth as polished steel. "Step into the conference room, please." My stomach dropped. Not because I'd done anything wrong. I hadn't, but because Lyle didn't say please, unless it was a trap. Inside conference room B, nicknamed the box by the rest of us, I found not just Lyle, but also Marjorie Finch, Viridian's chief compliance officer, and a man I didn't recognize in a navy blazer with a too-crisp tie. No one offered me a seat. "Mira," Marjorie began, not looking up from her tablet, "it's come to our attention that you've been consuming food in your workspace during restricted hours." I blinked. I always eat after 1 o'clock. The memo said, "The updated policy, circulated last Monday," Lyle cut in, "specifies that all food consumption must occur in designated break areas between 12 o'clock and 12:45 p.m. only. No exceptions." My mind raced. I hadn't seen any updated policy. I checked my inbox daily, twice, sometimes 3 times. Nothing. "I never received that email," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Lyle slid a printed sheet across the table. "Acknowledgement was auto-logged when you logged into the intranet portal on Tuesday. Your digital signature is time-stamped." That was impossible. I hadn't logged into the portal on Tuesday. My login credentials had been glitching for days. I'd even filed a ticket with IT. But before I could explain, Marjorie looked up, her eyes cold and tired, like she'd already rehearsed this scene in her head a dozen times. "Mira, Viridian operates under strict regulatory frameworks. Even minor infractions, especially those involving policy noncompliance, can trigger cascading liabilities. Given your role in data compliance, we expect you to model adherence, not undermine it." And then, as if reading from a script they'd written weeks ago, Lyle said, "Effective immediately, your employment with Viridian Dynamics is terminated. Security will escort you out after you collect your personal items." I stood there, stunned, my half-eaten tuna sandwich still sitting on my desk 3 floors below, forgotten. They didn't let me say goodbye, didn't let me explain, didn't even let me grab the framed photo of my grandmother I kept by my monitor, the one she'd given me on my first day of my first real job, whispering, "Work hard, but never let them make you small." 2 security guards, guys I'd said good morning to for 3 years, stood by the elevator bank as I packed my things under Lyle's watchful eye. My hands shook so badly I dropped my favorite pen. No one picked it up for me. I walked out of Viridian Dynamics that afternoon with a cardboard box, $87 in my checking account, and a rage, so quiet it felt like ice in my veins. For 2 days, I barely left my apartment. I replayed the scene over and over, searching for what I'd missed, what I could have said. Then, on the 3rd night, while scrolling through job boards with tear-blurred eyes, I remembered something. The intranet portal. Viridian used a third-party compliance platform called OptiTrack, a slick, overpriced system that logged everything from training modules to policy acknowledgments. I'd worked with their API during a data migration project last year, and I remembered one thing the vendor rep had bragged about. Every action is immutable. Every timestamp is blockchain verified. You can't fake a signature in OptiTrack. It's legally bulletproof. But I hadn't signed anything. Curiosity cut through the fog of humiliation. I pulled up my old project notes, dug through archive Slack threads, and found the contact for the OptiTrack support lead I'd worked with. His name was Dev Patel, and he owed me a favor for helping him debug a critical integration flaw during crunch time. I sent him a message at 2:17 a.m. Hey Dev, random ask, can OptiTrack logs be backdated or auto-acknowledged without user action? He replied 10 minutes later, not without admin override. Only super users can force a policy acknowledgement, and those actions leave an audit trail. My pulse kicked up. Could someone else have done it under my login? Only if they had your credentials or admin access. But yeah, the system logs who initiated the override, when and from which IP. I stared at my screen, the pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity. They hadn't just fired me for eating lunch. They'd fabricated evidence to justify it. And if they'd done it to me, a nobody in data compliance, they'd probably done it to others. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a woman named Rosa Delgado who specialized in labor violations and had a reputation for taking on Goliaths. I told her everything. The missing email, the forced acknowledgement, the security guards, the tuna sandwich. She listened in silence, then said, "Send me your employee ID and the date of termination." 2 days later, Rosa called back. Her voice was sharp with something I hadn't heard in weeks. Hope. "Mira," she said, "I filed a preliminary inquiry with the Department of Labor. Turns out, Viridian's been under informal review for wage theft and policy manipulation for months. But they've been clean on paper, until now. Your OptiTrack log? It shows an admin override initiated from Lyle Brandt's terminal, timestamped 8:03 a.m. on Tuesday. Your login hadn't been active in 36 hours. I sat down hard on my couch. So it's fraud. It's worse, Rosa said. It's systemic. And if we can prove they've been falsifying compliance records across the board, not just for terminations, but for federal reporting, that's not just a wrongful termination suit. That's a federal audit trigger. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made a list. Names of colleagues who've been let go in the last year under vague policy violations. Dates, departments, patterns. I reached out to them quietly, carefully, through encrypted messages and burner emails. Some were too scared to talk. Others were furious, relieved someone was finally asking. One, a quiet guy from accounting named Ray, sent me screenshots of his own forced policy acknowledgments, all dated the day before his exit interview. By the end of the week, I had enough to build a pattern. Rosa filed a formal whistleblower complaint with OSHA and the DOL. She also sent a carefully worded letter to Viridian's legal team, attaching the OptiTrack audit logs and listing the names of 10 former employees whose terminations now looked suspiciously identical. 3 days after that, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mirachan," a man's voice asked. "Come. Professional." "Yes. This is Agent Daniel Reeves with the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Inspector General. We've reviewed your submission, and we'd like to speak with you in person." I met him in a government building downtown, in a room with no windows and a table bolted to the floor. He was younger than I expected, with tired eyes and a wedding ring that looked like it had been on his finger for decades. He didn't offer coffee, just a folder. Inside were pages of internal Viridian emails, some forwarded, some recovered from deleted servers. One thread, dated 6 weeks before my firing, showed Lyle Brandt emailing Marjorie Finch. "If we can't get voluntary attrition up by 15%, we'll need to accelerate Phase 2. Policy enforcement is our cleanest lever." Another email from IT to Lyle. "Override module activated for targeted terminations. All logs masked under routine compliance updates." I felt sick. They hadn't just fired me. They'd weaponized compliance, the very thing I'd spent my career upholding, to cut costs and silence dissent. And they'd done it while billing federal contracts that required strict adherence to labor laws. Agent Reeves leaned forward. "Miss Chen, what you've uncovered suggests Viridian may have defrauded multiple federal agencies by falsifying workforce compliance data tied to government contracts. That's not just illegal, it's a felony." He paused, studying me. "We're opening a full investigation, but we'll need your cooperation. And your testimony." I thought about my grandmother's photo, still sitting in a box in my closet. I thought about Ray from accounting, who told me he'd maxed out 3 credit cards trying to cover his daughter's asthma meds after Viridian cut him loose. I thought about the tuna sandwich, the stupid, ordinary act that had cost me everything, and maybe, just maybe, would cost them more. "I'll do it," I said. Now, as I sit here typing this, my phone buzzes with a text from Rosa. They just froze Viridian's federal contracts pending review. News outlets are sniffing around. "Keep your head down." Down the hall, my neighbor's baby starts crying, a thin, insistent wail that somehow makes the silence in my apartment feel heavier. I take a deep breath. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Viridian has lawyers, lobbyists, and a board full of people who've never eaten lunch at their desks because they have personal chefs. But I have something they don't, proof. And a story that's just beginning to spread. Because sometimes, the smallest act of defiance, a woman eating a tuna sandwich at her desk, can crack open the whole rotten system. And I'm not done yet. The days that followed were a blur of hushed phone calls, encrypted emails, and sleepless nights lit only by the glow of my laptop screen. Agent Reeves assigned me a case number, DOL, IG, 2025-8842, and told me to expect significant pushback. He wasn't wrong. Viridian didn't go quietly. First came the smear campaign. A former colleague, later revealed to be a contractor paid by Viridian's PR firm, posted on LinkedIn about how I'd struggled with boundaries and repeatedly violated workplace norms. Then, an anonymous tip landed in the DOL's inbox accusing me of data tampering, claiming I'd hacked into OptiTrack to fabricate logs. It was laughable but dangerous. For 48 hours, I barely breathed, waiting to see if they believe it. But Dev Patel, the OptiTrack engineer, stepped up. He provided a sworn affidavit confirming the logs were authentic and unaltered. Worse for Viridian, he revealed something even they didn't know. OptiTrack automatically archived admin override actions in a secondary, encrypted ledger one Viridian's IT team had forgotten existed. That ledger showed not just my case, but 73 others over the past 18 months. All terminations, all masked as voluntary or policy-based, all timed to coincide with quarterly budget cuts, 73 lives derailed, 73 families destabilized, all to shave a few percentage points off the bottom line. Then came the dominoes. One by one, former employees came forward, not just with stories, but with evidence. Pay stubs showing unpaid overtime. Denied leave requests stamped non-compliant. Performance reviews rewritten after termination to justify firing. Rosa filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of everyone affected. The media picked it up. First local news, then national, Lunchgate. They called it, half joking, until they realized how deep it went. Viridian's stock plummeted. Their biggest client, a federal health agency, suspended a $200 million contract pending investigation. Marjorie Finch resigned to pursue other opportunities. Lyle Brandt vanished from LinkedIn, then resurfaced 2 weeks later as a consultant for a shell company in Delaware. The Department of Justice opened a criminal probe. Through it all, I stayed quiet. I didn't give interviews, didn't post on social media. I just showed up, virtually, for every deposition, every meeting, every late-night call with Agent Reeves. I told my truth, calmly, clearly, over and over, until it felt less like revenge and more like duty. 6 months after I walked out of Viridian with a cardboard box, I sat in a federal courtroom in downtown Chicago. Not as a defendant, not even as a plaintiff, but as a key witness in United States versus Viridian Dynamics Incorporated. The courtroom was cold, hushed. Lyle Brandt sat at the defense table, thinner now, his expensive suit hanging loose. He wouldn't look at me. When the prosecutor asked me to recount the day I was fired, I did, without anger, without theatrics. Just facts. The tuna sandwich. The missing email. The forged acknowledgement. The security guards. The silence of people who knew better but said nothing. When I finished, the judge, a woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, nodded slowly. Thank you, Miss Chun. Your composure does credit to the gravity of this matter. 2 weeks later, Viridian Dynamics pleaded guilty to 3 counts of federal fraud, 1 count of falsifying labor compliance records, and 1 count of retaliatory termination under the Whistleblower Protection Act. They agreed to pay $47 million in restitution to affected employees, plus $12 million in fines. Lyle Brandt was barred from serving as an officer in any publicly traded company for 10 years and ordered to complete 500 hours of community service, ironically, at a workers' rights nonprofit. I didn't get rich from it. My share of the settlement was enough to pay off my student loans, cover 6 months of rent, and buy a plane ticket to visit my grandmother in Taipei, the first time in 7 years. But the real victory wasn't in the money. It was in the email I got from Ray, the accountant, telling me he'd used a settlement to open a small tutoring center for kids in his neighborhood. It was in the group text from 10 former Viridian employees who now met monthly for coffee, calling themselves the Lunch Club. It was in the new federal guidelines issued by the DOL requiring third-party audits of all compliance platforms used by government contractors, guidelines that now bore a footnote citing Chun versus Viridian as a catalyst. A year after that tuna sandwich changed everything, I started my own consulting firm, ClearPath Compliance, helping small businesses implement ethical, transparent HR systems. No backdoors, no overrides, just fairness coded into the architecture. Sometimes, when I'm working late, I make myself a tuna sandwich, same recipe, same whole wheat bread. I eat it at my desk, deliberately, peacefully. No one clocks the time. No one polices my crumbs. And if anyone ever tries to tell me I don't belong here, I just smile and say, let's check the logs. Because I learned something in that fluorescent-lit cubicle, in that moment of humiliation. Systems only have power as long as good people stay silent. But one voice, clear, calm, and stubbornly human, can unravel an empire of lies. And sometimes, all it takes is a woman eating lunch to remind the world that dignity isn't a privilege granted by a corporation. It's a right, and no one gets to take it away. 2 years later, I run my own ethical compliance firm, helping companies treat people like humans, not liabilities. Viridian collapsed under the weight of its own deceit, while Brant vanished into obscurity. And every Thursday at 1:05 p.m., I still eat my tuna sandwich at my desk, sunlight streaming through the window, no one watching, no one judging. Just peace, purpose, and the quiet joy of knowing that doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything, can sometimes give you back even more.